सो हे गाइस हमारे साथ जुड़ चुके हैं सहेज वेलकम टू द पॉडकास्ट द अनस्पोकन प्रोस एंड इट्स रियली अ प्लेजर ऑफ माइंड टू होस्ट यू सिंस a guy who is having who's a multi talented guy worked in so many things. तो बड़ा अच्छा लगा आपको यार, and after so long we are meeting after that Zomato event. So welcome to the podcast, Sahej.
Thanks for the very kind introduction, Bharat. Very happy to be here. It's nice to see you as well.
Right. Sahej, let's begin with your current role, current background, and what's that?
So currently I'm a product manager at ClueTrack. I've been with ClueTrack for the past almost 3 years now. And I joined as a designer. Now I've transitioned to PM. So that's what I'm doing right now.
ClueTrack करता क्या है, मतलब कैसी कंपनी है like?
So a lot of organizations have collected a lot of data about what their customers feel about them. So for a very basic example is if you're selling products, then you have Amazon reviews. But when it's time to innovate, when it's time to solve problems, when it's time to fix issues, how do you figure out which things to do first? Analyzing all that unstructured data, unstructured as in like someone has written out things in a paragraph. Analyzing that is a tedious job. It takes a while. Similar thing with surveys, right? If you want to understand what people feel about you, what should do next, you go out and do surveys. And then in surveys as well, you get this unstructured response. So what we do at ClueTrack is we take that unstructured feedback, run our proprietary theme analytics algorithm on top of that. So at the end of it, basically to simplify it, you get a dashboard that tells you, here are your top things being talked about. Here's how people feel about them, right? Do they feel positively, negatively? What specifically they have said? What you should do about it? And in a lot of different ways. So basically, we customize to certain sort of businesses. So you can get a matrix of what should you do first, or what kind of things are declining rapidly, stuff like that.
Okay, right. So, Sahej, design I think for me is the coolest job in the world अब तक जो है. And since you are that person जिसने transition किया from design to product manager, so tell me more about it. कि why did you do that and how did it happen?
I feel recently I've been looking at it like this. PMs haven't existed for a long time. Designers haven't existed. Like product designers, so to say, haven't existed for a long time, right? I mean, look back. I don't think there was any product designer 100 years ago.
Exactly.
Right? So it's not something that's innate to humanity. Mm-hmm. But if I have to find a parallel in across our history, right, then there are people who are problem solvers. And there are people, and generally those people would become engineers. They would become, and there are people who are leaders. So they will become, they would lead all sorts of initiatives. They could lead the church. They could lead the armies. They could lead whatever, right? Or even at a small level, they could lead their own village. So you have your punches, sarpanches and all that. So there have been people like that with those attributes. It's just that now the time has opened up where they can contribute in a certain meaningful way. I don't feel that product designers like you and I, mostly on the digital side, could have done a lot if Figma or Photoshop wasn't in space. Right? Because those opportunities have opened up, so our job roles have opened up. So I like to look at it because that tells me that this could also go down. Right?
Yes.
It's very, very realistic that in the next 10, 20 years, these roles don't exist anymore, especially with the advent of AI. So what it means to me is to be able to solve problems. So when I started out, I just wanted to, I didn't want to be a designer really. And I didn't want to be a PM either. Like all of these transitions happened for me, but what I really wanted was to get closer to the decision-making seat. I want a chair at the table each time. So I don't like feeling left out. So I have taken the path that took me closer to that decision-making chair, and that has led me this way.
So, but Sahej, we have this decision-making power in designers as well, and we just differ, not in not so many things, but yes, in some things from product managers, like analyzing data, we do that. Problem solving, we do that. problem finding is something which we do that too. So where is that difference in that product design and product management that you are in right now? What difference did you feel?
I think while product design can be at least half your day would be similar across organizations. When it comes to PMship, what you do is entirely dependent on what the organization needs.
Right.
You're basically like you're a team of handymen. Okay, whatever goes wrong at the organization, you're called in to fix it. Okay? So at least that's the case at where I work. Right. Obviously, if you get into a more structured environment, then you've specifically focused on product management, but therein as well, you're always answering to business problems.
Yes.
So
I think you have now more number of teams to handle as compared to
Yeah,
a
yeah.
product designer. Now you respond
So
to every single team, from sales to operations to marketing to technology and whatnot.
yeah. So see, a couple of things that does for you. One, you have very little time to do things on your own. So as a designer, I used to have this. I used to have a nice time. I would take it out for myself, sit down on my desk, ideate some things, put some things down, and I would get to do that. As a PM, I'm constantly racing to close things. So even if I'm blocking out time for like a working session, that's like 1 hour, 2 hours, or maybe it's in my off hours, right after work or early in the morning on the weekends. So that's a major difference that you don't get that sort of time. And secondly, what you really do changes very, very frequently. Every week you could be doing something very different.
Makes sense. So there are a lot of people who are transitioning into product managers. So I've seen people, guys and girls from IITs, even IIMs, they're transitioning to product management. So ये transition वाला जो phase था ना designer से manager का, how did it happen? मतलब क्या हुआ इस phase में? What was the challenge? What were the pain points जो इस transition में आए? How did you overcome them?
So fortunately for me, मेरा हुआ क्या, I tried to give NIT का exam and that I couldn't crack.
Okay.
So then I was like, अभी next CAT के लिए prep करते हैं. Because I didn't feel like I was doing enough where I was working. So like, but temporarily ठीक है. I think which is where a lot of people in, or in mid-20s or early 20s, that's where they are. Like 1-2 साल काम करते हैं, then we do a master's. So that's where I was. But luckily for me, our team and my managers, they were on the lookout for some help on the PM side. And we were also hiring another designer. So I was made this proposition that we'll hire another designer, okay, and you can start taking more PM responsibilities. So I didn't really go out looking for this opportunity. It just happened for me. I was fortunate enough for that. But thereafter, the whole year was about learning to live up to be a PM. And that was a different journey altogether.
Yeah. So कुछ दिक्कतें तो आई होंगी starting में, like what were the problems, major problems that you faced PM while taking this role?
Yeah, I think as a designer, and again, I will only speak from my experience, which has been working with small businesses or medium enterprises. What I've seen is that as a designer, you have more flexibility, you have less answerability to your bottom line. Okay. So you don't make decisions. Like if you have a certain decision to make, right? Should I put tabs here or should I put some different sort of UI? Or between two flows, what do you want to go for? Or even if it's something more strategic, like your color palettes, your tonality, those sort of things.
Right.
Or even which problems to pick, right? You're not necessarily answering to bottom line. That how will this affect what we're doing this quarter? Whereas as a PM, you have to constantly cut out all that noise because now you can do anything. You don't have to limit yourself with design. So you can You can change things on the tech side, you can change things on the marketing side, on how we sell and what we sell, right? You can even say that we should go for a different market. So if your space is so broad, you need to cut out all the noise and you need to be more restrained in what problems you're really trying to solve. तो उसमें क्या होता है कि there's a one problem that you're really trying to solve, right? But उसके बाद first order problem, secondary, tertiary ऐसे create हो जाती है and you get confused. And sometimes you start working on a third order problem. So I think one thing that I had to learn during that was how to focus on what we're really trying to do.
कोई ऐसी रियल लाइफ इंसिडेंट या रियल लाइफ स्टोरी इससे रिलेटेड हो तो बड़ा मजा आ जाएगा.
Right. I would say one thing that we saw. I'm not sure as a designer मेरा कितना contribution रह सकता था इसमें. But okay, let's take this example. So we were doing we have it's sort of a co-pilot. It's called Genie. Okay. So when you do a study with us, so you can you've got your analysis of what people feel about you, and along with that, you've also got a chatbot that can answer your questions with regards to that.
Right.
So I was involved in the conceptualization, the designing of the thing, and then for a while it wasn't working out. So then we started getting more involved with the implementation side as well. This was during my transition from design to PM. So and again, it differs for all organizations, right? So what our organization needed at that point was someone who could get really hands-on. So I wrote the first line of prompts. We were involved in the system diagram, that level of thing. I won't say architecture, but those sort of things. What's going to be the flow? It was an agentic flow. So in doing all that, one insight that we got was that people are not looking for good answers in one shot. As a designer, when I designed this thing, I designed it such that the user will ask one question and the system will give one answer. Right? But as a PM, when I looked at other products, what I realized was that people are not necessarily looking for the right answer in one go. And they're very forgiving to LLMs. They have learned to work with them. If they really want, like if you're in a leisure mode, then it's fine, But if you really want to solve a problem, you will work with ChatGPT. You will tell it all the things that you needed to do because it will do it good.
Yes.
So with that insight, we changed our perspective. Instead of aiming for fixing things in one go, which is a very difficult problem, because it means that with LLMs, it's like you need to get the perfect answer, you need to give the perfect prompt. And if our users are not necessarily tech enabled, okay? These are CXOs and high level executives. So they don't necessarily have the time to, get involved with very sophisticated prompting techniques and so on. And we cannot tell them that, we didn't give you a good answer because you didn't give us a good prompt. So instead, we changed our strategy. Rather than measuring accuracy in terms of what was the question, what was the answer, we started looking at, was the user able to solve their problem? So if they came in looking for something, were they able to solve it, and how many answers, back and forth answers it took them to get there? So I would say that first part here is, as a designer, I wouldn't have gotten access to this problem altogether. And the second part is that there would have been a tendency to, if we say accuracy was a problem, right? There might have been that as a designer, I would have been able to do some things about it. There's all kinds of UX patterns out there to tell people that it's not as accurate, or how to improve the accuracy, or manage the relationship when accuracy is not very good. But as a PM, I was able to just break it down and say, boss, people are not looking for one-time accuracy. Let's do it differently.
Makes sense.
So that's one example.
Nice. So Sahej, if you go back in the past and look at yourself, and अभी since कितना time हो गया आपको product management में?
Less than a year.
Less than a year. तो अगर मैं उस सहेज से बात करूँ जो first transition कर रहा था, and now this Sahej, so what advice would you give yourself when transitioning into PM?
I would say this is something I'm still learning, but simplify. So I come from, I studied English honors, so that's literature, right? English literature. So I have a certain way about words, and I tend to write, I like to write very sophisticatedly with all sorts of nice words and all that. And it was nice for a while, but then as a PM, when your core job is to be the like the silo, I won't say silo, I would say you're the reserve of truth, right? If anybody wants to come looking for truth, it should be ready with you. This is what we want. These are our problems. This is what we want to do. These are our goals.
Right.
So you want it to be so simple that people can relay that information. Like, that is the test of simplicity. If I tell you something and you have to, now, maybe let's say towards the afternoon, you have to tell someone, I spoke with Sahej, he told me this. Can you, between the information that I gave you and the information that you relayed, right? What is the delta? How much, how little have you sacrificed in terms of the meaning? And I would aim for as little as possible. So that I think simplicity, making things really, really simple, because they are.
Yes.
At the end of the day, we are not doing anything different. The markets are not working any differently. We are still a bunch of people who are trying to put food on the table.
Yes.
We've just gotten very meta in our barter system, right? To the extent that we are trading money on top of money on top of money. But it's just people trying to put food on the table.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think simplify.
Yes, तो simplification आपने कहा, so that is a really nice point, because as a designer I relate very much to it, because when I design something तो वो चीज़ बड़ी मुश्किल हो जाती है कभी कभी कॉम्प्लीमेंट करना किसी नॉर्मल यूज़र के लिए कि यार ये काफ़ी कॉम्प्लेक्स लग रहा है. सो आई थिंक दैट्स समथिंग वी ऑल शुड केयर अबाउट, like how making things simple. So Apple is a great example of that. So Sahej, right now you have spent almost a year as a product manager. Now people are coming into this field. As a product manager, what do you expect from freshers, and what do you expect them, what skills do you expect them to have? And क्योंकि उनको कोई आइडिया नहीं है, उनके पास कोई रियल लाइफ प्रोजेक्ट नहीं है, इम्पैक्ट नहीं है उनके पास, तो what is expected of them?
I think I have to give you a boring answer here. So what happens is that different organizations have different needs, and they're going through different problems. Like we launched some months back, so we are slightly post-launch. Our problems are very different from an organization that's targeting for an IPO, an organization that's trying to close off things, an organization that's going through, let's say, some legal trouble. So,
yes.
And consequently, the PMs would need to bring a different skill set to the table. At the same time, people are trying to enter from various places, right? So there are people who've been in tech, there are people who've maybe done an MBA, there are people who've done boot camps, and all of them will come with their own knowledge. Right? I've seen this is how things done, I've seen this is how things are done. So if an organization needs something very different, and you've studied something very different, so what you need the most from a good PM is flexibility. So I would say, if you're joining, be very, very, very flexible and try to understand what is really expected of me and what is the least I can do in that regard. Right? There's a Pareto principle, right? So what is the 20% you can do to get 80% of the outputs?
Yes.
Live by it.
So
okay.
Sahej, in my previous podcast, this one thing came very prominently. That is, stakeholder management is very important part in a product manager's life. So how did you do that, and what challenges did you face in that particular stakeholder management?
There is a word for this. I'm forgetting the name, but anyway, there's a bunch of across different fields. There's a bunch of, like, game theory is one. Okay, math, economics, and there are other similar theories as well, which basically looks at a system and its participants. सबके अपने अपने motives हैं, stakeholder के भी अपने motives हैं. So if you try to look at it from that sort of an approach, just being super empathetic, right? ये एक आदमी है या ये एक औरत है or whatever, right? These are some people who are trying to do something. I am someone who's trying to do something else, and you approach it from that. What is his goal? How can I help him achieve his goal? And that is stakeholder management. Like if your stakeholder wants something, but सबसे common example क्या होता है? They will give you a very weird suggestion.
Yes.
Right? And then you have to say no.
Happens all the time.
Happens all the time, right? And in that moment, and I've seen this a lot, right? I have also gone through this. So I had worked with startups for, I think now I'm in the 6th year of my professional journey. But for the first 3 years, I worked specifically with very, very small startups. और वहाँ पे problem तो होती है because your founders are, your founders are not, they haven't worked with a lot of different verticals. तो उनका एक specialization है, which is what they've been doing, and that's all. Or in terms of design, as you were discussing earlier, they will give you, in terms of feedback, they will say, do something creative. Yeah, or या मजा नहीं आ रहा. So how do you deal with that? I suggest that you be empathetic. You try to understand. You ask the right questions. You try to really listen, because anybody will tell you. That's always, like, I think we listen very, very little. Most people are telling us very explicitly what they need. We're just not ready to accept it because we don't think it's right. But I would say keep aside what you want to do for a while. Just understand what is this person trying to do. एक stakeholder की, let's say your stakeholder is a PM. उसके क्या goals हैं? Right? What is he trying to do? Your stakeholder is a CEO. What are his goals? What is he trying to do? Where is the company headed? You get some approximation of that. Then you'll try to understand, why does this problem matter to him? Let's say you're talking about a problem which you feel, yeah, I should be the judge of this. Let's say, for example, as a designer, very common one would be, let's say you have 2 different designs, right? They're suggesting, नहीं ऐसे कर दो. Or maybe एक बहुत common होता है, they're suggesting you to put a lot of information. Okay, बहुत सारा text डाल दो. Yeah, है ना? I won't say logo बड़ा कर दो, because I am hoping that we are past those times. Logo बड़ा. But at least product design mein, I see this a lot. Put a lot of text, right? Explicitly saying some things. Whereas as a designer, you would want it to be more subtle. More of a, let's say, you want to do things like progressive disclosure and so on. So, they're trying to do something. अब उनके भी जो goals है, it is making sense with that regard, right?
क्योंकि उनको business चलाना है ना, तो इसलिए उनको जो समझ में आता है, like they throw at you. You are a PM, you are working as a PM, you do this. मुझे इतना पता है कि मुझे बिजनेस में इतना % का राइस चाहिए, ये चाहिए, वो चाहिए. नाउ यू डू इट. ये वाला सीन.
बट एज ए डिजाइनर इट्स वेरी डिफरेंट, क्योंकि पीएम के पास तो फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी होती है कि आई कैन आर्ग्यू कि अच्छा, ओके, यू आर सेइंग, लेट्स से फॉर अस इट्स वी आर डूइंग अ लॉट ऑफ प्रोजेक्ट्स, दे आर टेकिंग द प्रोजेक्ट, द टाइम पर प्रोजेक्ट इज वेरी हाई. आई कैन आर्ग्यू, आई कैन से नो शो मी कहाँ पे हाई है. But as a designer, you don't get to do that, and especially when you have to close that decision कि 2 design है, कौन सा करना है, आज शाम को डेप्थ को जाना है, right? So you don't get to argue. So there, I think what really helps is if you can align, how can you translate that decision into an impact wherein they can make a similar judgment. मतलब instead of saying that this is a better design, putting all the fancy UX things in place. Again, this depends if your stakeholder is not a UX person, right? If they're a UX person, then you're already in a good place. So good for you. But if your stakeholder is not a UX person, then unko kitna UX bolo, they're not going to budge.
Not everybody is Brian Chesky, na?
Yeah. And for good. Different organizations need different people.
Yes.
So how can you translate the consequence of that decision in their language? Don't say that this is better because of this, blah, blah. But unke terms mein, if his priorities are that he wants, basically one thing that he may have noticed is that the users are saying, yeah, your app lags a lot. Yeah, your app is very slow. Okay. So then you can say, see, the user is trying to do something. अभी आपने इतना information उस पे डाल दिया, तो वो पढ़ने लग जाएगा, तो उसको slow लगेगी ना, because उसको पहले पढ़ के click करना पड़ा.
Correct.
So instead, you do progressive disclosure. You do one thing, they can move ahead. Then you do next thing, they can move ahead. So if you want to reduce slowness, of course, dev से लड़ाई करो,
हाँ
है ना? उनको बोलो. But on the design front, you go with this because this will improve the perceived slowness.
नहीं, ये काफ़ी अच्छा पॉइंट बोला एज अ पीएम दैट यू शुड स्पीक देयर लैंग्वेज whatever they are.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you're dealing with
As
stakeholders,
the PM,
speak
तो
their
you
language.
have to. वो तो it's a given.
See, the reason why I'm asking this question is कि जो नए PMs आते हैं, जो कंपनी में एज अ इंटर्न आते हैं, चाहे या फ्रेशर्स आए, तो वो क्या करते हैं, दे डील विद दिस काइंड ऑफ थिंग फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम. अब
Yeah.
स्टेक होल्डर्स, अब उनके उसमें डायलेमा रहता है दिमाग में कि यार हमें ना परफॉर्म करना है. अब हम आए हैं इतनी सारी बातें करके, इतनी ढींगे मार के आए हैं, है ना. तो अब यहाँ आने के बाद अगर मैं परफॉर्म नहीं करूँगा तो दिक्कत हो जाएगी. तो वो डायलेमा रहता है उनके माइंड में कि ये रादर देन, अब उनके पास चूज़ करना होता है लर्निंग परफॉर्मिंग. तो वो क्या करते हैं, बैलेंस आउट करने की कोशिश करते हैं स्टार्टिंग में, दे गेट एग्जॉस्टेड. तो द रीज़न वॉज कि क्या करना चाहिए एक फ्रेशर पीएम को. नाउ दैट यू हैव टोल्ड इट, तो वो काफ़ी सही था कि यार स्टेक होल्डर मैनेजमेंट, अगर कोई स्टेक होल्डर आपसे कुछ मांग रहा है, कुछ पूछ रहा है, डोंट रश इन टू परफॉर्म. जस्ट रिलैक्स एंड ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड कि वो पूछ क्या रहा है एंड ट्राई टू लर्न एज मच एज यू कैन.
I will add something there. This is what really helped me. मतलब if I see what was the transformative decision in my life, because I was trying to, मैं this NIT के लिए prepare कर रहा था, तो I was not very motivated. So I am the kind of person, if I'm not, I will go to the depths of, okay. So I started to pick what is motivation. I am not motivated के लिए, I made a timetable and everything, but I also picked what is motivation. So there's one book, very common, I think it's a recommendation from a lot of people, and the terminology has also flown across. It's called Mindset. It's by Dr. Carol Estwick. So growth mindset and all वाला वो आता है ना, that comes from there.
Right.
So that book basically talks about this, that you said it very right. If someone is coming now, they're also coming with that baggage of I have to perform.
Right.
But what happens is, like, if you see, if you try to make vectors of this, right, what your organization needs versus what you need, right? You also need, मतलब तुम्हें लग रहा है कि you need something different, okay? But if you achieve organizational, मतलब if you give returns to your organization, you will also achieve that. So rather than, मतलब mostly if you're trying to prove yourself, ना, तो you go in the opposite direction.
Yes.
And that is a overhead for the organization, क्योंकि अभी इस बंदे को समझाना तो है ही, but इसको अनलर्न भी कराना है. फिर इसके खुद के बायसेस है, इसके खुद के एजेंडास है. Correct. Your voice is a bit low.
Yes, you're right. कि उसके अपने बायसेस रहते हैं, तो you have to unlearn कराना is like something very challenging. ये तो बहुत होता है. Preconceived notions लेके लोग आते हैं यहाँ पे.
So as a PM, I would say, don't, like, keep yourself aside. Just take the problem. Don't think what it means to you, or what is your way, or how do you prove, or how do you not fail. Think about the product. How does it succeed? How does the product succeed? If the product succeed, the magic that you do is, it will be in, people will come asking you. Simple as that. Yeah. How do you know you've done a good job? People will ask you for your inputs. People will ask you, कुछ भी काम कर रहे, you will build that reliability कि इससे input ले लेते हैं. So it's nobody else, no one will ask you for what numbers or all that. Plus आप अगले interview में जाओगे तो resume पे there's nobody coming to check those numbers.
Yes. That is
at least at a lower level. Obviously अगर आप बड़े level पे हो तो फिर तो those numbers are public. But at a lower level, nobody is coming to ask you. Correct. So focus on the problem. सब छोड़ दो. Everything else will follow.
Yes. So I think that's really nice advice. And what's that last advice that Abhi, now we are very close to this wrapping up this one. So what's that advice that you would give someone who is lost, as someone who is currently किसी और field में है but really wants to join the product management field, or someone who is really starting in the product management field? What's that one advice?
I think, देखो, as a PM now, you very rarely get very clear problem statements. और जब प्रॉब्लम स्टेटमेंट क्लियर नहीं होती तो मोटिवेशन बहुत लो होती है. तो फर्स्ट ऑफ आई वुड से इफ यू वांट टू बी अ पीएम, you have to wake up every day and motivate yourself.
right.
So and that's something that not everybody can do throughout their life. So I would say ki sometimes you have other commitments, or sometimes maybe it's just not the kind of thing that you do. For example, I am bad at giving exams. I don't like giving exams. I hate the concept. Similarly, if someone feels that they're not good at keeping themselves motivated, they want more clear problems and then solving those problems, then maybe this is not for you. So first figure out why, okay? Because it's going to be a very vague problem space. You have very little of the power and all of the accountability. Okay? So it's a challenging space. But one thing that you need to do as a PM is to listen. The world is overflowing with feedback. And if you look around yourself, Bharat, you also deal with your own stakeholders. Yes. You would have been telling them 10,000 things.
Yes.
But वो कितना सुनते हैं?
सही बात. सुनने वालों की तो
nobody is listening. And you're an expert, right? अब देखो कि your organization is paying you, right? तो अगर आपका opinion सुना नहीं जा रहा, it is not making into the decision tree, right? So the money that's spent on you is getting wasted, right?
Yes.
And if I see, because there's more ways to look at it, but I look at it as a PMS. I am here to make the business succeed in very fundamentals. ठीक है, प्रॉफिट बढ़ाना है, लॉस कम करना है, इन्वेस्टमेंट लानी है, ऑल दैट सिंपल. तो उस रिगार्ड में सबसे पहले तो ये जो इतना फालतू का बर्न है ना, इन ट्राइंग टू मतलब सेम थिंग बताने के लिए 4 बार बोलना पड़ रहा है, which is fine in other roles, right? But as a PM, you cannot risk it. You will have very little time with your key stakeholders. Okay? उनके साथ time नहीं मिलेगा. You need to really listen. You need to aggressively look for feedback.
Yes.
And the right feedback. Early feedback. And उसमें you don't have to be biased. You cannot be defensive. Right? You have to put your ego aside and constantly take feedback to improve the thing that you're working on.
Correct.
And I think, and then believe in it. I think secondly, this again depends on where you're in the organization, but
एक point
so for example,
sorry, please continue.
So okay, for me, one other thing that has been a recent is I've been co-leading our pod. So usme there's a bunch of people. One thing that I'm also learning now is if you try to understand what are people trying to do, what are their goals, what are their aspirations,
right,
and then deal with them in a similar way. Same as stakeholder, right? Okay, your engineers are also your stakeholders, your QA team is also, your designers are also your stakeholders. उनके क्या goals हैं? And उनके personal goals ज़्यादा important होते हैं, right? They don't have business goals.
Correct.
They have personal goals. So how can you take that and marry it with the business goals? I think that's how you become the link between business and the people.
Yes, correct.
So if you can do that, and in any capacity, right? If you have influence over any person, just try to see how can you maximize their output to the organization.
Makes sense.
You're already going to be doing so much that nobody else can do.
Right.
So that would be the thing.
So एक point बोला कि world is very nice point. World is overflowing with feedback. But एक fresher जब आता है ना, तो वो difference नहीं बता पाता feedback from opinions, है ना? तो ये कैसे वो figure out करेगा? Like एक अच्छा feedback क्या होता है? क्योंकि एक fresher तो इस perspective से आता है, मुझे सीखना है ना? मुझे perform करना है. तो random people give him random feedbacks and उसमें वो chaotic हो जाता है उसके लिए, और confusing हो जाता है काफ़ी ज़्यादा कि मैं किस पे एक्ट करूँ यार, इसने बताया इस पे एक्ट करूँ या सीनियर ने बताया उस पे एक्ट करूँ. बड़ा डिफिकल्ट होता है. ये चीज़ कैसे फिगर आउट करनी होती है? व्हाट्स राइट फीडबैक?
आई वुड से नो योर लिमिट्स. ठीक है. सो if you're feeling a certain way, are you even eligible to feel that way? Matlab, do you have that expertise in that regard to feel that this is not the right thing to do? Sometimes you should just listen to people who are the experts. Because so question yourself and know your limits, right? So keep mera expertise ka. Secondly, and more importantly, know everybody else's limits. And that way you can, if you feel that you are right, but someone with more influence is coming with a different standpoint, understand their limits. Agar aap qualified nahi ho to make that decision, how qualified are they? Right? And because when you're a fresher, you're very insecure about this. You think everybody else knows more than you.
Yes.
So it takes a while to learn this, but as a whole, treat people as people. Nobody's like, think about AI, right? Very few people have been working in AI for more than 4 years. Because जब से ओपन एआई आया है ना, जब से चैट जीपीटी ड्रॉप हुआ, तब से तो काम करना चालू किया है.
Correct.
It's very likely that most of the people that you're working with never knew of AI during their actual learning, मतलब जो college वाला time होता है. They have no more exposure to the technology than you do. So AI could be an example. It could be businesses. It could be anything.
So I think
I would say
what you are trying to say is कि जो सामने वाला आपको feedback दे रहा है, try to understand that feedback. Try to understand the person as well. कि वो कहाँ किस स्टेज पे है, किस लेवल पे है, किस तरीके से बता रहा है. Now it's on you how you analyze that information, है ना. Not every input is useful. ये हमेशा से रहा ही है. 10 लोग बोलेंगे 10
लोग. Today, आज के टाइम में you have the opportunity to validate that feedback with AI.
मैं यही बोलने वाला था. Correct. ये चीज़.
देखो I do most of my work with AI. It is a non-negotiable at this point. Yes. But उसमें भी वही सेम ही प्रॉब्लम है कि अगर AI आपको कुछ बता रहा है, अगर आपको AI कुछ बता रहा है तो how do you trust it?
Yes.
तो वहाँ भी सेम प्रॉब्लम. You have to learn to you have to find that balance. That balance comes with good feedback. You have to build an intuition. I think as a PM, this will be your sixth sense, ठीक है? और ये this will be your alpha. Because आप बाकी सब on paper काम कर लोगे. But your intuition is क्या होता है ना? If you solve a problem, you get a certain outcome. But if you can prevent a problem, you will never see that outcome really. और वो एक organization की hidden growth है, right?
Yes.
They avoided a problem altogether, and that comes from intuition.
So basically, this all comes from not rushing the process, but with experience, with over time, है ना. तो ये चीज़ है. But yes. So Sahej, I think we'll wrap this up with a rapid fire round, जो कि मेरा favorite है. ठीक है.
Yes.
So let's start with this. So one word to describe your first year as a PM. Wild. Okay. What's that biggest myth you heard about product management before joining?
It's data driven.
Yes. Feature first or user first?
User first.
Which PM tool do you love the most?
A spreadsheet, Google Sheets.
Okay, one skill you didn't expect you would need as a PM.
Intuition.
Okay. Figma, Notion, Jira. Pick one that you would keep forever. Figma. Morning stand-ups or late night brainstorming?
Brainstorming.
Late night brainstorming. Okay. First product bug. Panic or play it cool?
Play it cool. It's a process. It's fine.
One thing that you admire about your senior PMs?
Their knowledge.
सही है. हाइक मिलेगी हाइक. So what's your dream product to work on someday?
Dream product. It would be my product. I don't know what it is. It would be my product.
Okay. Right. So, Sahej, I think this is it for this podcast. Thank you so much for joining this podcast. You've got so much experience as a very, early as a founder in such a young age, and worked with this transition. And काफ़ी अच्छा लगा ये podcast करके. I learned so much from a designer who has transitioned into product manager. तो perspective जानने को मिला.
It's always a pleasure to speak with you, Bharat. And we were, as you were discussing your initiative with the podcast, it's a brilliant initiative. I think you're solving a very real problem, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. And for the people who are watching this podcast, Sahej is always there to help you out. He has been part of a lot of groups for designers and PM as well. If you have any problem in trying to reach him out, I'll put his LinkedIn ID in my comment box. Thank you so much, Sahej. Bye.
Good day. Bye-bye. Thank you.